What are we talking about today? It is the concept of when you have some sort of campaign running, how do you figure out that next evolution, that next step? How do you take the thing that's pretty good to make it great? I get this question all the time, and honestly, there's no one better for me to talk this about than my guest today. For those of you that don't know, Roslyn Drotar Cassidy, she's been in the legal marketing space for over 20 years. Started out in a boutique law firm in every position, from answering the phone to marketing coordinator to operations. From there, she then went to work for a national marketing agency to a national organization, and then finally started her own agency to get back into that firm life, to make a difference for small firms nationally, combining that big marketing agency experience with that every job in a law firm experience to sit in such a cool spot for so many firm owners. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh my goodness, thank you. It is an honor to be here. Love when you and I can talk about all the things that we know work day in and day out with these firms and truly just make a difference for them. I'm so excited for today's conversation. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm excited too. Thank you for coming on. I always tell people this joke. Whenever I'm invited on a podcast, I'm super thankful. Whenever anybody comes on my podcast, I'm super thankful. And so I figured out at one point, everybody's just as happy to be in the same room with each other as they are. And so it just gives you this awesome opportunity to respect each other and have a great chat and hopefully drive a ton of value to poor struggling law firm owners with that question of how do I fix this marketing strategy? How do I take it to the next level? How do I solve these things?
Yeah.
So we're going to dive into that today. But before that, I do want to talk about our last episode for a couple seconds. Most recently, last week, we had Julie Holunga on to talk about It's All in the Lingo, the language of leadership. And so this was a super cool conversation because there's definitely a part of it that applies to lawyers in trial, saying things to a jury, talking a certain way to convey their message, convince people. Then there's that other side of it that goes to every business owner, but especially us as lawyers, because we have that funny role of being very assertive as a trial attorney and being way less assertive as a boss, even though we can have the same tactics, the same techniques, the same strategy, the same lingo to make sure that we are conveying the right conversation of leadership. So super cool chat, but don't jump over to that one until this one is done, because this is one that I've been nerding out for I don't know, we booked this like a month and a half ago.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while. Yeah.
All right. Where do we start with this conversation in terms of finding the next evolution of marketing, making those tweaks and changes? Where should we start?
Yeah, I will tell you when I start working with a firm, when I onboard them, I have a very deep dive. I call it a VIP session. It can be an hour to an hour and a half. And we really talk about everything that they're currently doing. And it's so interesting to me because sometimes people will say, well, I'm not really doing anything. I'm not doing anything. And then, they've subscribed to all these things and they really truly are doing all these things. And sometimes they even have like 2 CRMs that they're running. It's crazy. They're like, I'm not really doing anything. What's interesting is a lot of times they're just not doing anything with what they have, and they might not even know what to do with it. So I'm a huge believer with making it simple and really truly starting with where they are, looking at what they're currently doing and taking a deep dive into that, right? Because you get so much information just by having that discovery part of it that is what you're currently doing. And I think you'd be surprised if you did your own audit and looked at kind of maybe what's coming through on your credit card or what your team's doing and that sort of thing. It's a real big indicator for what you're currently doing, and that's huge.
I mean, I feel directly attacked by that. Just because ours, it's so funny because for ours, it's like there's.
Yeah, I was just say more about that.
Well, we're paying for some of the stuff we have for ourselves, some of the stuff we have for clients, some of the stuff we have an account for both, some of the stuff we have an agency account on. And so there's so many things from wait, why are we paying for this product and that product? We're because that's for this client for them to do. It just so yes, I 1000% agree from that standpoint.
And honestly, I'm personally attacked too because I do the same thing, right? I subscribe to something. I'm like, we're going to get to it. And it could be as simple as I just need to hire somebody to throw them in there to make that happen, and you're just not doing it. So it's super telling when you just do an audit of what you currently have at your fingertips.
And I want to echo the quote unquote, I'm not doing anything. If you have clients coming in the door, you're doing something.
Yes.
You may not be spending any money on ads, You may be getting those from referrals. You may be just doing a great job for clients and they're sharing your praises. You may be, just have the super great firm name when it comes to the yellow pages or the local bar's referral source or something. But like, if you've got cases, you're doing some marketing.
I love that. I love that because they'll say that. And I'm like, your phone's ringing. You guys are doing something. And it could be just referrals and you're delivering on promises, which I'm sure you agree with this. When you can bring somebody on that's already in that space, adding those layers of marketing to it is a huge game changer to up level. If your phone's already ringing and you're just delivering on your promises, that's huge.
Totally. Well, it's the 90% of success is showing up.
I love
and
that.
I like when I think Clio was the last one. I think it was Clio Trends. They like ghost called a bunch of law firms and found like what percentage don't answer the phone or return messages or whatever for potential clients. Like, you were leaving money on the table.
Yeah. I've done that several times too. It's so interesting what you find. I would encourage everybody listening right now to ghost call your competition. It's amazing. It's really telling what the people around you are doing. It's very effective.
In good ways and bad ways. Some people might blow you away with what they're doing and other ones might scare you with how little they're doing. But either way, it's helpful for you to know.
Agreed.
As a law firm owner perspective. All right. So my thought process on this topic is to do some examples and then have a sort of walk through how we would tweak and change those. Does that work for you?
Yes. Yep.
All right. So I think that the most common one, I ran these Google ads and I didn't get any cases. And like, that's the start of this situation. We'll go deeper on, building this out. But I think that's the question asked 10,000 times a day in every lawyer Facebook group.
Yeah.
Where do you start working with a client when that's their complaint?
Yeah. I love that question. And I'm not just saying that to be cliche, but honestly, if you're really working with a good vendor, they want to hear from you. They're probably just not. And they might be struggling with something. They might need content. They might need, to know that you're doing blogs. Come behind and do some SEO, tweaks or what have you on the website. So I always tell people, if that's the case, let's look at your KPIs. Let's see where your ROI is now. Let's have very strategic conversations with them, even weekly if we have to, for the next 3 months to just sit down and see where's the break. Because a lot of times, really, truly, the vendors just might need something from you. I had this exact example with a client that I'm working with. They were disputing almost every single LSA ad that was coming in. And it was just because they were being a little bit too picky and it was completely throwing the algorithm off. So it ended up just being a training issue for the people on the front lines that were, this person did book a call, don't dispute it. Like, we just have to kind of help them to get it into a place where we can get it converting. So I would say 100% having conversations with them. This is one of those things that you can't just set it and forget it. It's one of those things that you can lean on, kind of like cruise control, right? Let them do their job because they're really good at it. But you still have to be involved. You have to have some conversations and figure out what they need.
Well, so, okay. This person's our example here. They're cheaping out. They don't have a vendor. They don't know what the issue is. They don't even know where to start. So What are the most, I guess, and let's do it this way. What are the most common potential problems that prevent ads from converting?
I would say copy. I would say landing pages are off and the ads are probably not resonating with the landing page. So if you've gotten a break in any one of those, then there's something off with your marketing strategy. What's great about analytics is you can look at, okay, if I'm getting a lot of traffic from the ad and then you see that there's a break in, the landing page, then it's the landing page. You got to tweak your ad copy on your landing page.
And so I want to put a slightly finer point on that. So in essence, you will have the clicks on the ad that is sending them to the landing page. Then if you go into Google Analytics or something similar, you're seeing people on the page, but they're bouncing, they're not clicking from the page, they're not booking on the page. So like this way, like you'll know the click was there. So the ad got them to the next step, but they're stuck in that next step some way.
Yeah.
And share if you've got any. The craziest one I've ever seen is a client just never had the plugin for people to book.
Oh.
So it was like the button was there, but the button didn't work. And there were people there, and I don't know, maybe they were trying to click, maybe they don't, I don't know, but it wasn't a real button. It said book now and nothing happened.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't tied in. The flip side, though, is that's probably the best problem to have, because fixing the button might be the thing, as opposed to, a client hating what was on the page or how the page looked or how the page loaded or whatever.
That's true. When you get that email that is, I can't register, right? You're like, oh, well, it's working.
Yeah.
It's working. They want to register. Yeah. Yeah. Little things like that. Like, the button's not working. The zap is broken. Little things like that. Mm-hmm. But what's great about analytics, and I'm sure you agree, I love this, right? You can 100% look at your analytics within a couple of weeks of launch and see where the break is, because it really, truly should take a funnel approach that is, this is my clicks and engagement from here to here. What is it? Is it a good KPI? Is it hitting a good, in the digital space, what we would consider a good KPI? If it's not, then there's something wrong with the landing page. Okay, now if we have people there and we have people on it and they're just not opting in, then there's something wrong with your offer. So what's really good about it is, I think a lot of times with you and I, when we're looking at it daily, we can see it really clearly, right? You're like, wait, there's something either broken, the button's broken, or there's something wrong with what's happening here with the offer.
So I always, in that situation, I'm going to advise people to then A/B test a couple of the different stages as possible.
Yeah.
And so for anybody who doesn't know, in essence, we're talking about like, this is landing page A, this is landing page B. So 50% of our clicks on our ads go to landing page A, 50% go to landing page B, or we might have different ad copy, but depending upon those stages. Are you recommending anything different than that?
No, I think that's great. And it could be as simple as one has a video, right? One has a video and one's just copy. Just split test them and see which one does better. Always try and beat out your existing, I guess, case. So if it's not converting, then you split test it against something else. If that one wins, get rid of the other one and launch another one. Always try and beat out your existing offer.
Yeah,
that's what I was like.
The only thing I would change on that is don't necessarily get rid of it fully. Don't pay to send more eyeballs to it. But every now and then, they've always had that weird thing where like you want to bring back an older ad for some purpose and it does better for some other reason. But totally, I love that concept, and I love the video or no video. What are some of the other most common splits that you're testing?
I love split testing. I was just going through this with another firm. We were doing an email campaign, and we were split testing, sending people to a workshop versus straight to book a call. And the reason why I love that one so much is I feel so often that people are leery to just book a call with an attorney. It can be one of the hardest conversions that you get, right? So what else can we send them to that might give us a better conversion, even if it's to opt in for your email list? Because now that you have them in your email list, you can warm that prospect and you can keep dripping on them. So that's one of my favorite ones is, hey, let's just split test this from booking a call to either a download or a workshop, a less invasive, I guess, approach to just going straight for a book a call.
And do you see that working equally for reactive areas of law, PI, criminal versus proactive areas of law, estate planning and whatnot? Or do you see?
That's a great question. Actually, no, I see in the reactive space, it can be, it'll be an easier conversion, a little bit better. But if another thing that you can do in that space, if the book a call doesn't work, and I bite my cheek a little bit to say this, and you're probably going to want to go, why did she say that? But you only want to give them one option, right? But if you send them to that one option that's book a call and they don't do anything and you're not getting anything in that reactive space, it's not a bad idea that then just to downgrade, your offer, kind of bring it down a little bit and say, all right, just opt in for our e-newsletter or watch this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. So, and then test that, right, on the same landing page. So I don't know how you feel about that. Sometimes I feel like it's a little bit reckless, but it's a great case study to see if they kind of go, okay, well, I'm not ready to talk, but I am ready for this. And then once you have them in your world, you're solid.
Oh, totally. And look, I mean, it's crazy to me. There's a ton of studies done on how people actually look at websites. You run your eyes basically from left to right, top to bottom.
Yeah.
So having the book a call at the top, and then maybe in the footer, download our free ebook or sign up for something, or at least lower, because what's going to happen is then you're in essence allowing people the opportunity to go right to you at the top. But if they've looked for more information, if they've gone down, if there was something in their gut that said, I'm not ready for that call right now, you've got that second bite at an apple.
Yeah.
I would be hard pressed to suggest anybody do it the opposite way, like have the full bite at the top, have the lower bite at the bottom.
Yeah.
But totally, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to do that, because you have to realize what's your ideal client going to do? Does your ideal client have to need you this second? Or does your ideal client, are they going to have some sort of vetting process, consideration process, whatever we want to call it? They may prefer to see that ebook. They may prefer to watch the webinar. They may prefer to go to your YouTube channel. And I've talked to clients that were like, oh my God, I'm talking to you. I watched 100 hours of your YouTube videos. And I was like, that's got to be the most boring thing for you. I'm sorry that you put yourself through that, but so be it.
And I love what you said, because when you do that, you're really meeting the client where they are, right? If they're not ready and they just are kind of more in research mode, and you give them that and they spend time there and there's value add, then you're eventually going to, they're going to keep going down. They're going to keep the scroll going. So I love that, because it really, truly, that's all you want to do in marketing, right? Is you want to meet them where they are and be able to make sure that they're getting value from you. They're spending time with you. They're getting to know you. Next thing you know, they're on your YouTube channel and they're watching hours of your YouTube videos. Eventually they're going to connect, and that's what you're trying to do.
All right. So we've run a bunch of different ad sets. In Google, they've got the static ads, they've got the dynamic ads where they'll come up with some of the different, synonyms and plug them together and stuff. We sent people to a couple of different landing pages. We found the one that's the best. A lot of people are going into our webinar and then they're dying in the webinar. So now we've got this, 20 to 60 minute webinar, and that's just killing our conversions. What are you walking clients through if that's the part where their potential clients are getting stuck?
Yeah. So if that's the case, then the webinar is broke, not working. There's something off. We're not, showing up, delivering value. One of the things that I love to do is walk through my version of, Russell Brunson's perfect webinar, which is hook, story, offer. It works almost every single time. If you can hook them in, show up with something very catchy, you throw the hook out there. Reel them in. You want to do a hook. You want to connect with them by telling stories, 100% storytelling, instead of going into the legalese part of it, right? Like they so often just want to know that you can help them and solve their problem. So by telling stories is how they're going to connect and go, oh, he does relate. Oh, he does get this part of it. Sharing stories, success stories that you have provided value with for your clients, and then an offer that they can't refuse. And one of the things I tell people so often is, if you're doing a 20-minute, 60-minute webinar, make sure that you're not just doing the simple 1 minute, okay, give us a call tomorrow if you're interested in that, and cutting it. Like, you have to really think about your offer has to be an equal amount of time as the rest of your webinar. I love that you're like, oh my gosh, how many times do you see that, right? You're like, you just killed it for an hour on this webinar, and then you just closed. You just literally shut things down. Like, you didn't even ask people to blow up the chat or any of that stuff,
It's like they cue the music at the Oscars, and you're like, and thank you to everybody else involved in this. Now that I got through only 2 people. Yeah. Yes. I love that so much. Hook, story, offer.
Hook, story, offer. It does it every single time. And you just have to be as intentional with your offer as you are with everything else. Be as intentional with your offer as you are with the hook, with the story, and then the offer at the end. Give them an offer that they cannot refuse. And you can create what that is. You can create it with value or whatever, but an offer that they cannot refuse.
So that brings me to the part that I get stuck on so much, because also being a lawyer and being somewhat anal about it, When you have the clients who are like, well, what stories can I tell with client confidentiality?
Mhm.
How are you walking them through that?
Well, you don't have to use their names first and foremost. So it can be very high level. We had Susie come into the office and this is where she was. And so what I love to tell people to do is create the scenario in front of you that if they didn't come to you, if Susie and John didn't come to you for whatever they're coming to you for, where would they be without you?
I like that. So
That's, yeah.
the anti-story.
The anti story is the A story. And then here's what happened when they did come to us. And I would always add into when they came to you the heart centered piece of it. I feel so often in the legal space like the attorneys do amazing things every single day. Like you all are a complete stand for people that are in front of you that have no idea what to do. And the value that you create for them is more than just getting out of a DUI or, doing their estate planning for you. There's a reason that's deeply centered in front, like they're going to lose their job, they're going to lose their livelihood, they're going to lose their family. Like they're big things. And so always make sure that you anchor to that and really dig down into the very, I always tell people, think of it like this, like you have a paper cut, right? And it just kind of hurts. But if you're laying on the ground bleeding, that's where your value is. Like really go deep as to the why they're in front of you. And it's probably a lot bigger than what you're expressing or relaying in your storytelling.
And don't be afraid to ask the client if you can share their story.
I love
or
it.
film them saying exactly what Roslyn just talked about. Like film them explaining what happened when they came to you. And then in the middle of the webinar, you could be like, hey, look, I'm going to say nice things about myself, but like, let's hear it right from, the client themselves.
Yeah.
And the transformation, that is exactly the thing that you're going for, the transformation in their life, the drastic change from problem before to solution to problem after just becomes so strong. And psychologically, maybe that's not the right word, having multiple people present or speak actually keeps people's attention longer. So if you've got your hook, you have them share their story in the middle, you go to your offer, it's actually like there's another person presenting, which will keep people's attention for a longer time frame. It could be a win-win-win.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And I want to just kind of go back to one of the things that is really crucial, I think, in the story is when you're asking people why they're coming to your office, I always tell people, make sure you get really clear on what got them to pick up the phone and call you. If you ask them 3 times, it's going to be very different than the very first answer. So if you ask them, once, why did you call? And they're like, well, I saw your ad. Okay, well, that's great. But, what got you to call today? Well, I'm concerned because, XYZ. If you reiterate that and say, okay, so X, Y, and Z is why you're here, but what about that concerns you or is keeping you up at night? That's your story. That's your sinker. That's the reason why they're there. That's the value that you create in your space.
And I love how you did that, because we're talking about that from a marketing perspective, but there's also the benefit of that from a sales perspective, because now you have listened and asked them and can understand what their true issue is. So you can address it from a sales perspective to close them and then copy that same tactic as a marketing thing for other people. Obviously falling back to the fact that you are truly the best fit for them, that you are going to do a phenomenal job, that you are also a great lawyer. Like those are our table stakes for all of this. We're just building on top of those things.
Yeah.
But yes. I love the going deeper there in that moment.
Yeah. And I love that you're saying the sales part, because you're absolutely right? If that's the part that helps you come in and know that you're creating value and this is how we're going to close this deal. Like so often people will think sales is such a, evil word in this space. And it's not. It's creating value. I would challenge you to think about it from less of a place of sales and more of enrollment in their best interest.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Enrollment in their, see, I like that. I just finished Daniel Pink's To Sell Is Human like 2 weeks ago. So I'm not on the sneaky used car salesman sales kick anymore. But I love that enrollment. And one more time, enrollment in their
best interest.
Best interest.
Yeah.
I love that. We'll pull that as a quote. Awesome.
Yeah.
So where are you, not to totally change topic, but while we're talking webinar, where are you seeing live versus recorded in terms of the impact? How have you seen that change? I guess hopefully, knock on wood, we're out of COVID or through COVID or whatever else.
That's an interesting question. And it's interesting because I'm seeing it vary so drastically based on where, the firm is. So if you've never done webinar, I typically will say, all right, let's do a live. How big is your conference room? If it's small, it just seems less scary, right? They're like, oh, I can fit 30 people. Okay, well, let's start there and let's perfect it as you go, right? So starting with a smaller audience. And then when you can cap it too. You can say, well, we only have room for 30, and then you have to join via, Zoom, what have you. And then as they get it really nailed, right, where it's converting, they got the hook, the story, the offer down, you have your team there supporting you, you're blowing up the chat, and you get it to where you really have it just ironclad nailed, then I would say you could turn it into evergreen, consistently running webinar that's converting. So I always tell people start where you are. Like if this is new to you, then let's start with in your conference room, small audience, and just make it better and better every single time. Review it, go back and look at it, review your analytics, what converted, what didn't convert. What's great about webinars these days is like you can do 2 in a week, right? And you can change your close and see which one did better. And you got to be really careful with your numbers too, because even though you might have got smaller numbers converting to book a call, if those smaller numbers convert to more revenue, then it's a better close. So you got to be super intentional with, I think, every bit of the way. Because we just did this evaluation and we were very clear. One had a price up front and one didn't. And, one of them converted better over the other one, but the numbers were ultimately better with a smaller audience, if that makes any sense. The smaller audience generated more revenue. So I think that went a little bit deeper than you wanted to know about the webinar piece of it. But I would say start with where you are, where your comfort level is. It's interesting. Sometimes I've seen people, they just rock it in front of an audience. If you rock it in front of an audience and you don't care to do a webinar, don't do it. Like, I feel like you should be able to declare that wherever you are in your practice, that you feel like you shine. If that's your process, like we're only going to do in person, only do in person if it works. That's not to say people like you or I are probably going to be like, nope, let's record it. Let's put it on the website and let's make it evergreen.
So I'm gonna argue the other side, sort of.
I love it.
Let me start with here. There are 2 kinds of people in the world. Those that think you can break everybody down into 2 groups and those who don't. So for this case, I'm violating my own rule. But from the standpoint of like introverts versus extroverts, to anybody who's listening to what Roslyn just said, and you were terrified about the concept of presenting in front of 30 people in your conference room, you may actually be better off starting on the webinar. And as long as you rationalize that as like a one-on-one conversation, have somebody stand behind the camera, you are just talking to them, that may be better for you as an introvert than doing the live group. No, I agree with what you're saying at 1,000%. So I'm not like actually arguing. But know that you may have to refilm it a couple times. You may want to run this up, or what Roslyn said there too. If you film it twice in in a similar time frame in 2 different clothing options, then that can be one of your split tests. You can send people to the first webinar or the second one. It's just getting something is better than nothing on this stuff.
Oh, right. That's it at the end of the day. Like, what are we going to do? Don't let it stop you. I can't tell you how often we'll try and get a date on the calendar. Like, when are we doing this? Oh, well, I love what you just said, because you just got a 90%. It's just showing up, right? And throwing it on the wall. If I would die if people went back and watched my first webinar. I'll have to pull it out. But
here's the thing. If you did that, I guarantee you the engagement would be 100 times a normal webinar of people just being like, oh my God, Roslyn, you've come so far. Oh my God, this is so cool to see. Like, there's the Gary V, the first wine library video.
Yes.
He's all the way in the back. There's terrible lighting. He's like,
it's horrible.
Welcome to Wine Library. This is the wine. But it's so funny to see. Maybe funny is the wrong word. it's so awesome to see the growth from those things
Yes.
that, like, if you've got your first webinar out there somewhere to anybody, you have this incredible, throwback Thursday opportunity to combine those two and,
Yes.
and do some crazy transition, right? Like, here's you with the handy cam doing it, and then like you smack your hands and it pops to
Right.
computer generated, looks like a Marvel movie, modern thing or something like that.
Yeah.
You're just going to get such a cool benefit out of so much of this stuff.
I agree. And you're gonna probably fail massively, right? When you first do it, and you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, don't beat yourself up. Just do it. Just do it. Just set the ball and go back. I would highly recommend you go back and you watch that webinar that he's talking about with Gary Vee. It's hilarious. I've seen it before. He looks like he's 12 and he looks like he's scared out of his ever loving mind, but he's showing up and he's doing it, and look at him now. And I absolutely love it. So just doing it, 90% of it is just showing up and doing it with whatever comfort level you're at best. I love what you said. If it's, I don't want to be in front of a room of people. I've had people start with, I just want my family in the room.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do that. We're going to do that. And other people are like, I don't want anybody I know in the room. I don't want anybody that knows me in the room. So just think about the best way for you to walk into that moment of how you're just going to show up and get your timing right? That's a big piece of it. I'm just going to show up and get my timing right. I don't even know that I love my content, whatever it takes to get that going.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned before you were split testing on sharing the price. And I love to go not as close of a point. It's always interesting to me situations where you want to add more friction to a process. You want to charge for a consultation. You want to tell price up front. You want to make somebody attend the webinar beforehand. Walk me through the analysis of, sharing the price in that example from the standpoint of, did it get fewer people? Did it get more interested people at the bottom of the chain? Like, what was the flow?
Yeah. So it was very clear. The pricing was very clear in what you got for the pricing. And it was compared against if you didn't do this, if you didn't move forward, the cost that would transfer to you type of thing. And it was very clear what it was. And we're just now going through the audience size that booked to a 15-minute discovery call. So I don't know how you feel about this, but that's another vetting process to me to qualify the lead. It's just a simple 15-minute discovery call to qualify the lead, to see who's going to show up and ask questions, and also honor the attorney's time. So it's a non-attorney that gets the value add that is plugged into that process. And what was interesting about it is it weeded out all the tire kickers, and there was more revenue on the other side of the audience size. More people were willing to, they knew what they were walking into. So there was less tire kickers. There was more openness about the pricing, and unapologetically so. So, it's interesting how I think so often you can split test that. Like I was saying, like you can do that in 1 week. And if it fails massively, you can back out. You can be like, okay, that didn't work. And you can back out and pivot. And I think at the end of the day, that's so much of what we do in marketing is, like you said, it's just all about split testing. It's all about what happens on the other side of it, and making 100% sure that you're looking at every data point along the way. So to me, it was a huge win.
Well, and it's interesting because there's things just are, right? Like in that situation for that client, it's a huge, for that attorney, let's say your client, it's a huge win because you're saving so much time. You're not having all these tire kicker consultations and whatnot. Now, the flip side of that is you might have a newer attorney that wants the reps of bad consults, that wants to go through the process of the consult a couple more times. True. It may be better to have more of the tire kickers in there. Or look, we are all God's gift to sales, let's call it. There's those people that are like, well, but if I get them in the room, I can convince them of any price. And, maybe they want to try it without having the price. It's so fascinating to me. Like if you really take the thing and you work out what the opportunity cost will be, what the pros and cons will be, ideally there's a right answer for you. It may be different than the right answer for somebody else.
I love that.
There are a ton of times where you have to try both, or for me, I changed my mind on some of those things 100 times.
Yeah.
depending upon, what's going on. But
Yeah.
I love the way you're doing that analysis.
And I think the important part, the crucial point in all of that, though, is the data initially coming out of both of those webinars. Like, we were like, oh no, the conversions were lower. But we're like, hold on a minute. Let's make sure that those discovery calls, are better. Like, I can't tell you how many times, too, we'll look at referral sources and people are like, this person gives me more referrals. But the person who gives less is actually converting. Those referrals are converting. So
Or
you
they're
might
more
have something,
valuable cases, or
right?
they're clients you actually enjoy working with. Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's really crucial to make sure when you're looking at those numbers, bigger is not always necessarily better, and really digging into the analytics behind it.
Well, that's why, like, for me, I always love when my clients are working with, Brooke Lively, Chelsea Williams, like someone on the true financial side, because
Mm-hmm.
like, for you and I, it's easy to show a client, you got these clicks, you signed up these cases, this is the average case value,
Yeah.
this is the close rate. Like we can work with the client through what the goal seems to be. But when they have that financial component at the end, it's like, all right, well, now let's look at profitability, because
Yes.
the $25,000 asylum EB-5 visa or whatever might actually be less profitable than the $5,000 asylum case. Or I don't know. I'm not an immigration attorney. I don't
Yeah.
play
No,
one on TV either. But
yeah. Yeah. But you're right. Like, I love it when you can start talking profitability, right? Like, it's a whole different level. I love it when you can have those conversations with people in the marketing, because you can be very intentional when you know your numbers, and you can look at something and you can say, is this profitable? Are we getting a good ROI? What are we going to do with it? Like that, to me, you're right. It's a game changer when you add that.
and it's beautiful, because like I think so many people get stuck up on the KPI in the moment. Did I get more clicks on this link? Did I get more consults booked here? I love that
Yeah.
you had that client go through. Yes, there were lower conversions, but to a consult, but were there higher conversions at the consult? And now we're talking about profitability. So like, make sure you're aware of what you're tracking in the moment and the long-term impact of that also.
Oh, I love that. So
That,
huge.
that's why I love, I mean, that's what I love about ads, because you can truly say like, all right, I'm running, these, at the end of the day, a good Google ad campaign, it might have 50 different ads, right? We've got, aggressive attorney versus caring attorney versus experienced attorney versus whatever. Everything else is the same. We've got, in this county and that county and this, whatever zip codes. And then you can run them to a different landing page with a different contact form, and you can track it the whole way through in a really good CRM. And it's fascinating to me that the ad that gets the most clicks is never the one that gets the highest close rate, is never the one that has the highest average case value, which is never the one that has the highest clients who become referral sources or repeat business within a 12-month span. So it's really about finding like, what is that true core most important part to you, and then A/B testing or split testing into that one, as opposed to just looking at every step as its own thing.
I love that. That's so huge. And I can't tell you, does it kill you? Do you ever see this where they're like, well, this one's the best one, let's go with it? Or they want to cut something that you're like, no, like this is working, and they don't see that part of it because they're not the future vision, or the end, goal is just kind of fuzzy or what have you. And so I love what you're saying, and it's fascinating to me too, because in the digital space, those KPIs, they can be so confusing and wonky. And, at the end of the day, that's where you and I come in, right? Like, we're like, all right, hold on a minute. Let's make sure we're making the best decision, the best next step for you and your practice with where you want to be, because it can be it's a big piece of it. It's fascinating.
When I always see that, what you just said, I always see that the most in social media. They're like, oh, I no longer want to do this platform. I no longer want to do this content pillar because I haven't seen whatever from it. And you're like, look, here's the engagement for that versus everything else. Here's the number of people that signed up for your email. Here's the people that, like, yes, you're seeing more direct signups from the ads, but that's because like they're going down this path as opposed to like getting into your orbit. And so, and let me hedge that statement too, because I get it. Like, if you're sitting there not making payroll, if you're sitting there having trouble, making a rent payment, you need stuff sooner, but the more that you can sacrifice for those long-term gains, the more you're building a brand, the more you can grow those consistent business, the client referrals over and over again. It all snowballs in a good way.
I love Gary Vee's analogy of social media. He says the ROI in your social media is like measuring the ROI of your grandma. Like the impact that she has on you, right? You can't really quantify it, but she's just this amazing support for you in all that you do, right? And so it's interesting because people, it's like the one thing that they're like, it's just a waste of time. And let's not forget, you can retarget all of that engagement. You can do something with all of that.
Roslyn, let's be super meta. But for social media, you and I wouldn't be here right now having this conversation.
Right?
I mean, like flat out. And I don't even mean that from the standpoint of like everybody watching this. I mean, like truly our connection is so much. I mean, we've got a couple clients in common now, but our connection is so much on social, like, you know, seeing the interesting things, helping people in the same way, being in similar groups. Like there's a way to grow a brand and meet other like-minded people and build like a true community across, you know, geographic area.
I love
in
that.
a super fun way.
That's perfect. That was a perfect analogy. You're right. Yeah. Collaborate and just, you know, be able to connect and build community. It's huge.
So we've got like 5 minutes left or so. What else do we need to cover on this topic? What did I miss?
Great question. I don't know. I feel like I could go on and on about all of this stuff. I would just say, you know, the marketing part, I think so often in the legal space is looked at like, I don't know, like this necessary evil, what have you. But I would just say challenge your mindset to just look at it like I was saying earlier. People need to find you. And if they can't find you, they're finding somebody else. And, you know, you being an advocate for getting people the resources that they need during some of the most trying times of their life. It's I always tell people, like, it might sound super crazy or what have you, but it's your duty. It's what you need to do to make sure that people can find the resources that they need when they're struggling the most. And so invest in it, look at it like an investment. And I'm just going to go even to the social media piece. I tell people so often, even if you're like, this isn't working, look at it as an investment. Your analytics are an investment into the next best step in your marketing plan, in your marketing budget, etc. And you need to be taking a piece of your revenue and it needs to be invested into a solid marketing plan and budget that you anchor to and you're having conversations around every single week.
I want to echo the duty to provide a resource to people when they're struggling. And the more that is truly your actual belief when you are making your marketing, when you're putting this stuff together, the more you are truly interested in providing that resource, 99% of the time, the more financially impactful it's going to be.
Oh, yeah. I love that. That's a great addition.
It's amazing to me, the people that put profit last, the people that put an emphasis on profit last, the people who put an emphasis on closing this specific case last are the ones that close the most cases, make the most money, provide the best experience for clients, get the most referrals, run the best firms. It's a mindset shift, but it's that gut reaction. You know, like you get on with a salesperson, you get that random spam email in your gut. You're like, this person only cares about money. You're doing that same thing for clients when you're conveying that. But when you go to that, the duty to provide a resource to people when struggling, you truly convince them to overcome that gut reaction concern and truly listen to you and truly realize you're the best fit and truly pick you in their biggest time of need and truly appreciate the legal work, the legal problem that you solve for them.
That's huge. That's huge. I love that. It's so true. And I think that's where maybe the stop is a lot of times. So thank you for adding that on there, because if I were to be truly honest, that's probably where the break is. And so you're right. You have to have that added piece in there, and it's really your why and your purpose. So got to get it in there.
Yeah. All right. So let me talk about our next episode, and I'll come back for final nugget of wisdom. So next week we have Muhammad Ramadan on, and You ever have those people in life that you haven't met yet, but then in like a 2 week span, 900 people are like, the two of you haven't met, you have to meet, you see some post here, they win some award, like whatever it is, that Muhammad is currently my person for that. Like just we connected in like 14 different ways in the span of about 3 weeks from a bunch of different people from intros. And then we're both tortured football fans. So we had that in common. We were talking about the future is now, the modern law firm owner. So Mohammed's going to go through what he's done for his firm over the last 12, 18 months, the impact that's had, the changes he's made. We are really focusing on the best current advice that we can possibly give in this episode. That will air next week on March 23rd. So if you like this and the other episodes and you want to learn more about what's going on now for the modern law firm owner, you got to come in and check out this presentation next week. That being said, Roslyn, for anybody who's been listening for the last 55 minutes or so, if they remember nothing that you said, what would be your most important takeaway? What information do you want to give to as many law firm owners as possible to help them be the exhibit A of a successful lawyer?
Yeah, I would say if there's anything that you are second guessing about taking the next best step in your marketing, I would say if you know your numbers, 100% very, very clear with your numbers, your KPIs, your ROIs, it is not scary. It is very easy when you know your numbers and you know that you've leveraged, you know that you've optimized your next direction on where you need to go. Numbers don't lie, and they will give you every bit of what you need to know for the next best step that you need to take. 100%. It's not scary. It's super easy when you know your numbers.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be a process.
Yeah.
There's gonna be changes. There's gonna be tweaks along the way. But I have never talked to anybody who knew their numbers super well and wasn't successful or on their path to being successful.
I love that.
But I've talked to a ton of people who don't have any idea what their numbers are and have no idea what their law firm's going to do in the next, 24 hours, 24 days, 24 weeks, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, agreed. Yep. And it will be a process, like you said, to get there. But once you're there, it's the best thing ever. You can sleep at night knowing that you are in the right place.
So for anybody who has listened to this and is smart enough to want to connect with you and hear your wonderful insight more, what's the best way or best place for them to connect?
Yeah, just go to my website, digitalsocialstrategist.com. You can book a discovery call right on the website, right there. I'm happy to talk to anybody about any questions that you have. It would be that easy, seriously.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Roslyn, thank you so much for being with us. To everybody who has watched or listened to this, thank you so much for spending the time. We hope you got a ton of value out of it. I know I did. I've got a whole page of things. And we'll see you next week for Muhammad Ramadan's episode on The Future is Now, the Modern Law Firm Owner.
I love that. Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor, and I could talk about all of this stuff all day long. I love us working together. It's always magic when you and I are in the same space, so thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. It is a pleasure as well.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Exhibit A Attorneys. If you're interested in becoming the Exhibit A of successful attorney, please check us out at legalesemarketing.com, EASE.